I'm James.
I'm Mari.
Okay. All right, I'm Joseph Correa, and I hope that after this speech you guys understand a little bit more what that means. So humans can be one of the most difficult things to understand on this earth. In order to first understand humanity as a whole, we need to understand ourselves. So if somebody came up to you and said you have to pick 3 objects to embody who you believe you are as a person, I wonder what it is you would pick. Before me, I have 3 objects, and I believe these objects have a lot to do with who I am today. This is a replica lightsaber from Star Wars. This is a PlayStation 5 controller, and this is an American flag patch. It may be easy to paint a picture of who you think I am based on these items, but as I mentioned earlier, humans are very difficult to understand and complex creatures, and I would hate to disappoint. So for the first object, this is a replica lightsaber of Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber from Star Wars that was handed down to Luke Skywalker, which was then in turn handed down to Rey. But you didn't come here for a lesson in Star Wars. Star Wars is one of the biggest impacts on my life. I grew up with it, and I played with my friends, pretended to be Jedi and Sith in our backyards, but it was always deeper than that to me. I learned life lessons from that mythos. I learned about good and evil. I learned about shades of gray. It taught me how sometimes good people can do bad things, and sometimes they truly do believe those bad things are for good reasons. I learned how complicated life is. I learned all this from a science fiction story, and grasping these deeper concepts at such a young age helped me to understand those around me and better understand myself. This next one is a PlayStation 5 controller. I grew up playing video games, and to this day, I use video games as an escape from reality. And yes, I can say I learned a lot from games I played, and they each have their own message and take you on a journey, but then will just sound repetitive. I've learned a lot about the world from video games, and I also learned a lot about myself. And I learned that reality to me is disappointing. I escape into video games because reality disappoints me. And maybe it's just my reality, but it's what I see in humanity. I see how people treat each other, and sometimes I leave the world behind and pretend it doesn't exist and go into a world where I can treat people how I want to treat people and how I think people should treat each other. I always wanted to be the hero and someone that people could look up to. And I've always had this deeper sense of purpose that I've carried with me. That brings me into this next object, the American flag patch. The American flag has always been a symbol of importance in my life. I was raised in a military household with a father that served 26 years in the Navy. And I had somebody that looked up that embodied everything I believed was a good American and a good person. When I turned 17, I signed up for the Navy myself. And by 18, I was a full-fledged sailor in my own right. I served 8 years in the Navy, and I learned more than I thought I would. Mechanical, survival, warfare, all that stuff aside, things I actually learned were way different than I expected. I learned about my capabilities, and all the capabilities that I had for good. I also realized that there was darkness in me that I was capable of. And I had a higher capacity for darkness than I originally believed. But without going into details, and the journey I went on while serving this country was one I might not have necessarily wanted, but as I stand here today, I know that it was one I needed. You cannot know how good the light feels until you spend some time in the darkness, and without darkness, the light wouldn't be that special anyways. It's very difficult for me to pick 3 objects that I believed embodied who I was. But in retrospect, I can see that I picked the right objects. And I can't say for 100% certainty that I know who I am, because I don't. I have no idea who I am most days. But the adventure that is life has nothing to do with who we think we are, and everything to do with who we're growing and who we're meant to be. The only way we find out exactly who that person is to make it to the finish line. And in this race of life, we take it one step at a time. Thank you. That's it. Any questions?
No,
That's it.
That was really good.